The first thing he noticed was that the boy's smile was wrong. Not the nervous kind of wrong a kid gets when they're on the big screen for the first pitch. Wrong, like one side of his mouth didn't get the memo. The minor league stadium was roaring lights buzzing against a summer night sky, country music thumping through the speakers. Down on the third baseline, cameras were rolling. The crowd was cheering as the team owner's grandson held the ball getting ready to throw. And Ethan Cole, the 39-year-old maintenance guy in a faded blue polo, was the only one staring at the boy's face instead of the scoreboard. The kid swayed a little. His right arm hung lower than the left. The microphone boomed his name to 10,000 people, but Ethan heard something else, the dragging sound of the boy's sneaker on the dirt, the way his eyes blinked out of sync. "Kid's about to drop," Ethan muttered, heart snapping from calm to combat mode in one beat. Beside him, a security guard laughed. "Relax, Cole. It's just nerves." Then the ball slipped from the boy's fingers, rolled harmlessly toward the catcher, and the kid crumpled like somebody cut his strings. The crowd roared, thinking it was a joke. Ethan was already moving. "Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world." Ethan Cole was not the kind of man anybody expected to run toward the spotlight. By day, he fixed jammed gates, flickering scoreboards, and temperamental plumbing at Harbor Field in Dayton, Ohio. His name wasn't on the program. It was on a plastic badge clipped to his shirt next to a ring of keys that jingled louder than any applause he'd ever get. He was the guy people called when the toilets backed up on Dollar Hot Dog Night. He was also a single dad. Most mornings before the sun burned the fog off the Little Miami River, Ethan made pancakes in a cramped apartment kitchen for his 11-year-old daughter, Mia. She had his eyes and her mother's stubborn streak, plus an inhaler she never left home without. Childhood asthma, the doctor said, like it was a footnote. To Ethan, it was a siren that never fully shut off. He knew what it was like to watch somebody fight for breath. He'd seen it in dusty villages a world away when he'd been a combat medic patching up 19-year-olds who were so scared they shook. Afghanistan had given him a chest full of ribbons, a knee that still clicked in the rain, and a brain that woke him up at 3 a.m. because a sound in the hallway didn't feel right. When he came home, and then watched his wife Lauren lose a quiet battle with depression 2 years later, something in him locked down. The Army had taught him how to keep people alive. Life after discharge taught him that sometimes even that wasn't enough. So he built his world small and safe. A steady maintenance job. A cheap apartment close to the stadium. No surprises. No chaos. Just enough money to keep Mia in soccer cleats and inhalers, and a schedule that let him sit in the bleachers at her games instead of watching from a phone screen at work. People at Harbor Field knew him as Cole, or Maintenance. They didn't know about the tourniquets he'd tied in the back of Humvees, or the letters he'd written to mothers when their sons didn't make it. He didn't offer, and nobody asked. On a muggy Friday in July, the Dragons were playing a sold-out game. It was Heroes Night, ironically enough, discounted tickets for veterans and first responders fireworks planned for after the 9th inning, red, white, and blue bunting draped along the rails. For Ethan, it was just another shift. Fix a broken soap dispenser. Clear a jammed turnstile. Swap a flickering light under Section 112. Then his radio crackled. "Cole, we need you near the field, owner. Wants an extra set of hands by the dugout. VIP thing." "Copy." He wiped grease off his hands, clipped the radio back on, and headed down the concrete tunnel. As he stepped out near the third base line, the noise hit him like a wave organ, music vendors shouting, kids screaming for foul balls. That's when he saw the owner's grandson standing alone on the grass, ball in hand, cameras aimed straight at him. And that's when Ethan noticed the smile that wasn't really a smile at all. Ethan didn't remember making the decision to sprint, only the thud of his boots on the warning track, and the confused shouts behind him. A trainer rushed in from the home dugout. 2 security guards jogged half-heartedly toward the fallen boy, and the stadium announcer tried to cover the chaos with an awkward joke about first-pitch jitters. The crowd laughed, oblivious. Ethan knelt beside the kid, but before he could say a word, a thick hand grabbed his shoulder and yanked him backward. "Hey, maintenance stays off the field unless called," barked Vince Darden, head of security, a man who looked like a refrigerator with a badge. "We don't need you playing hero." The words hit harder than the grip. Ethan steadied himself, raising both palms. "He collapsed," Ethan said. "Something's not right." Vince scoffed. "What do you know? Stick to mops and broken seats." A trainer finally reached the boy, but Ethan could see the hesitation in the man's eyes. It was the kind of professional caution that said, "Let's not make a scene in front of the cameras." The boy lay limp, his chest rising shallowly, his right hand twitching. Ethan felt heat crawl up his neck. He swallowed it down. This wasn't Afghanistan or a med tent. This was a baseball game with popcorn on the ground and a marching band warming up behind the outfield wall. He had no authority here, and yet the boy's eyelid fluttered in a way Ethan recognized far too well. Not dehydration, not nerves, something neurological, something serious. But before he could say anything, Vince stepped between him and the boy like a bouncer guarding a VIP. "Go fix something," Cole Vince snapped. "Leave medical stuff to the pros." The crowd began to murmur as the trainer helped the kid sit up. Cameras zoomed in. The boy's grandfather, the team owner Raymond Greeley, hurried over in a tailored suit, jaw clenched tight. "What happened?" he demanded. The trainer shrugged. "Could be heat. Could be nerves." The boy swayed. "No," Ethan whispered to himself. That's not it. He wanted to speak. Every instinct in his body begged him to speak. But the memory of being told again and again that he wasn't a medic anymore pressed on his lungs like weight, and Vince, still blocking him, stood smug and immovable. Ethan stepped back. His hands shook, but he hid them in his pockets. He stayed near the tunnel after the boy was escorted to the training room. The game resumed like nothing had happened. Fans cheered, vendors shouted. The stadium pulsed back to life. Ethan felt like he was suffocating. His radio crackled. "Coal Section 114 says their hand dryer's busted again. Hop 2, a busted hand dryer. A child had collapsed 30 yards away, and he was being sent to fix a hand dryer." He forced himself to breathe. "Do the job. Stay steady. Don't make waves." When he stepped into the concourse, 2 ushers were whispering. "Did you see that kid wipe out? He's Greeley's grandson. They'll bury this whole thing. Bet they blame it on nerves." The words slid under Ethan's ribs and twisted. He couldn't stop replaying the boy's face, the drooping corner of his mouth, the uneven blink. Classic signs. He'd seen soldiers show those signs minutes before full neurological shutdown. He reached the broken hand dryer and began unscrewing the panel more for something to do with his hands than any urgency. 2 dads stood at the sink behind him, talking loudly. "Maintenance sure took his sweet time running out there," one said, snorting. "Probably wanted attention." The other laughed. Ethan tightened the screwdriver until his knuckles turned white. "Ignore it," he told himself. "People talk when they don't understand. Let it go." But inside pressure was building. By the time his shift ended, fireworks were exploding over center field, casting red and gold light across the stadium. Ethan walked out through the employee gate, rubbing his temples. He checked his phone, 3 missed texts from Mia. "Dad, did you see the fireworks? We had pizza. Ms. Hargrove let me pick the movie. When are you coming home?" Guilt tugged at his chest. He texted back quickly. "Be home soon, Peanut." Then another message came through, this one from Ms. Hargrove, their neighbor, who watched Mia in the evenings. Ethan, Mia had a little coughing spell at 7. She's fine now, but maybe check her inhaler when you get home. His stomach tightened. He lengthened his stride. He'd forgotten to refill the spare inhaler he kept in the kitchen drawer. That wasn't like him. He never forgot things like that. But tonight had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. Their apartment was quiet when he walked in. The TV cast faint blue light across the living room. Mia was half asleep under a blanket on the couch, a bowl of popcorn at her side. "Hey, Peanut," Ethan whispered, kneeling beside her. She blinked awake and smiled. "Daddy, you're late." "Yeah," he murmured, brushing hair from her forehead. "Sorry. Busy night." She yawned. "We watched The Sandlot. The kid who gets kissed by the lifeguard looks like Jensen from my class." Ethan chuckled softly. Even on the hardest nights, she managed to crack light through the dark. Then her smile faded. "Ms. Hargrove said you ran onto the field. Did something bad happen?" Ethan hesitated. He didn't want her to worry. Mia didn't need extra fear, she'd seen enough. Ambulances, oxygen tubes, hospital ceilings. He wanted her world small and safe, not filled with collapsing strangers and memories of things he couldn't fix. Just someone who needed help, he said gently. "Did they get it?" He swallowed. "I hope so." She studied him quietly, in the unnervingly perceptive way children sometimes do. "Your eyes look sad," she whispered. He forced a smile. "Just tired." She leaned her head on his arm. "You always help people, Daddy, even when they're mean about it." That landed harder than she knew. He tucked her in, checked her inhaler, then stood alone in the dim hallway. Something inside him, something he had spent years keeping locked down, was rattling its cage. The next afternoon, Ethan arrived for his shift early, hoping the stadium's quiet hours would settle his mind. He walked past the training room door, telling himself not to look inside. But voices stopped him. "I'm telling you, he'll shake it off. Kids are resilient. That's not what the neurologist said." Ethan froze. The voices belonged to two executives, Raymond Greeley's right-hand men. Men in suits, not uniforms. Greeley's furious one muttered. "The news got wind of the collapse. Wants it handled. And what about the trainer suggesting we bring him straight to the ER? We're not calling an ambulance to a minor league stadium," the man snapped. "Bad optics. Sponsor backlash." Ethan stepped back, heart pounding. Not calling an ambulance. The kid clearly needed medical evaluation. He shouldn't have been listening. He should have walked away. But then one of them said, whatever that maintenance guy thought he saw, ignore it. He's lucky he wasn't sent home for getting in the way. Ethan's jaw tightened. His pulse hammered in his ears. He walked quickly down the hall before anger pushed him to say something he'd regret. He ended up in the break room, staring at the vending machine without seeing it. His friend Luis from custodial walked in. "You good, hermano? You look like you're wrestling ghosts." Ethan tried to shrug it off. "Just a long night." Luis threw his hands up. "Man, you charged that field like a linebacker. Whole staff's talking about it." "Great," Ethan muttered. Luis lowered his voice. "Watch yourself. Vince is saying you overstepped." "Yeah, well, a kid collapsed. And management doesn't want the story to spread," Luis warned. "You know how this place gets about PR." Ethan didn't need the reminder. He'd already been warned twice about staying in his lane. Luis clapped him on the shoulder. "Careful, brother. Jobs like these, they don't care how big your heart is." Ethan looked away. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." The pressure followed him everywhere. During the 6th inning, a supervisor scolded him for walking too slow through the concourse. Never mind that he'd just finished unclogging a drain that had backed up into a souvenir shop. Later, Vince called him into the security office. "Look," Vince said, leaning back like a boss addressing a troublesome employee. "You made us look unprepared yesterday." Ethan blinked. A child collapsed. "And you think the stadium wants some random maintenance guy taking charge on live TV?" Vince snorted. "Stay in your lane. Let professionals handle crises." "I was a professional," Ethan said quietly. Vince laughed outright. "Were. Past tense. You're not anymore. And if you ever pull a stunt like that again, you won't be here anymore either." Ethan held still, every muscle taut. Then he nodded once, slowly. Vince dismissed him with a wave. As Ethan turned to leave, something sharp twisted inside his chest. Not anger, not exactly. More like grief. For the man he used to be. For the man he wasn't allowed to be anymore. When the game ended and the crowd poured out, a security guard hurried toward him. "Cole, you gotta come," he said, out of breath. "It's the kid, the owner's grandson. He's not waking up right." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Where is he?" Ethan asked. "Training room." Ethan started jogging before the guard finished speaking. This time nobody stopped him, maybe because fear had finally outrun pride. He pushed the door open. The boy lay on the exam table, pale as chalk breath, uneven, his right side slack again. Two trainers hovered over him, arguing in hushed voices. "We should have taken him in last night," one whispered. The other shook his head. "Greeley said no ambulance. Media's all over this." Then the first trainer noticed Ethan. "What are you doing here?" Ethan didn't answer. He stepped closer. One look told him everything. This wasn't heat exhaustion. This wasn't nerves. This was a neurological emergency moving fast. The trainer blocked his path. "We don't need help from maintenance." Ethan's voice was calm, but it shook with the force of everything he could no longer hold in. "If you don't let me examine that boy," he said quietly, "he may not make it to the hospital in time." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at him. And for the first time since Ethan returned from Afghanistan, someone finally asked, "What do you see?" Ethan leaned in, jaw tight, hands trembling, heart pounding. This was the breaking point. Something big was coming, and there was no going back. The boy's breaths were no longer breaths. They were thin, rattling pulls, like someone dragging air through a straw. Ethan felt the sound hit him in the spine, the same way it had hit him in a tent outside Kandahar years ago, when a 19-year-old private whispered, "Sir, I can't feel my arm." The past snapped forward like a whip. The trainers stood frozen, helpless beneath the fluorescent buzz of the room. One had a phone in hand, but wasn't dialing. The other just shook his head, repeating, "We need authorization." Mr. Greeley said no hospitals, unless Ethan cut through the space between them before another word could be uttered. "Move," he said. It wasn't loud, just final. The trainer blocking him stiffened. "Cole, this isn't your—" The boy's right hand jerked violently, his back arched, and his head hit the table with a soft, sickening tap. That was it. Ethan's voice dropped to a place so steady it made everyone else in the room go still. "He's seizing from a neurological event. Get me space." They moved, not because they agreed, because the man standing over that child didn't look like a maintenance worker anymore. He looked like someone who'd been here before. Ethan positioned the boy on his side, bracing his head to prevent further injury. The seizure passed as quickly as it had begun, leaving the child limp. Breathing too fast, eyelid drooping lower than before. He shouldn't have still been on a trainer's table. He shouldn't have been anywhere but an ER. Ethan leaned closer, watching the kid's pupils. Uneven. Delayed. "Come on, buddy," he whispered. "Stay with me." A door swung open. Raymond Greeley stormed in, face-flushed, suit jacket flaring behind him. "What the hell is going on?" Why is maintenance touching my grandson? Because he knows what he's doing, one trainer said under his breath. Greeley jabbed a finger toward Ethan. Get him away from the boy, sir, Ethan said calmly. Your grandson is showing signs of a stroke. He needs immediate transport. The room went dead silent. Greeley's face hardened. He fainted. He's dehydrated. The doctor said, I don't care what the doctor said. Ethan snapped before he could stop himself. He's declining fast. You wait 5 more minutes and you won't have a grandson to argue about. Every head in the room turned. Even Greeley's anger faltered. Ethan forced himself to breathe. He could feel panic flooding the edges of his mind. The same panic that had swallowed him the night he was too far from Lauren to stop the downward spiral she never came back from. Not this time. He looked down at the kid, whispered words only he could hear. Not again. Please, not again. Then he went to work. The trainers scrambled under his orders even if they didn't fully understand why. Get me a towel, fold it. You bring the med kit. Call 911 and tell them we have a juvenile neurological emergency. Not heat stroke, not dehydration. Neurological. That's critical. One trainer hesitated with the phone. But Mr. Greeley lifted a hand, eyes fixed on his grandson. Make the call. The power dynamic in the room shifted instantly. The person in charge wasn't the billionaire. It was the maintenance guy with fear in his throat and certainty in his hands. Ethan elevated the boy's head slightly, watching his breathing. Shallow, rapid, wrong. He turned to the nearest trainer. Does he take meds? Heart seizure, blood disorder? No, the trainer said. Nothing. Any fall? Hit his head earlier. Greeley shook his head numbly. He said he felt fine this morning. Played catch with me before the game. Sometimes young bodies hid danger terrifyingly well. The boy groaned, one side of his face sagging. Tears sprang to Ethan's eyes before he could blink them back. He saw Mia, at 6 years old, gasping through an asthma attack so violent she couldn't stand. He saw Lauren 2 nights before she died, smiling too brightly, telling him not to worry. He saw all the things he'd failed to stop. Not today, he told himself. Not this child. The trainer dropped to his knees beside him. What do you need? Ethan swallowed, steadying his voice. I need you to trust me. The trainer nodded. Ethan examined the boy again, checking the strength of each limb, the slackness of his grip, the twitching of his finger, the delay in blinking. Everything pointed in one direction. A clot. A bleed. Something blocking the brain's messages. He didn't dare guess which. Only a CT scan would tell. But he could make sure the kid lived long enough to get one. He lowered his voice. We need to keep his airway clear. Keep him on his side. Don't let him roll onto his back. The trainer followed every command. Greeley watched the scene, breathing shallowly. Is he dying? Ethan didn't sugarcoat. He could, but not if we move fast. The ambulance sirens were faint at first, somewhere beyond the stadium walls. Ethan's chest eased slightly. Help was coming. But not fast enough. The boy's breathing worsened. His eyelids fluttered. Ethan gently tapped his cheek. Hey, stay with me, champ. The boy opened his eyes for half a second and whispered something that broke Ethan's heart clean in two. I'm scared. He squeezed the kid's hand. I know. I've been scared like that too. But you're not alone. I've got you. The words came from a place deeper than instinct, deeper than training. They came from the memory of holding Mia in an ER chair with wires all over her chest, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. He kept them anyway. He wasn't losing another child on his watch. Vince barged in. Cole, "You can't just shut up," Greeley snapped, not taking his eyes off his grandson. "Let him work." Vince blinked, startled into silence. The room had changed. Ethan could feel it, everyone could. For once, people weren't looking at him like a handyman with too many opinions. They were looking at him like someone who understood the storm they were drowning in. The boy jerked again, coughing weakly. Ethan steadied him with both hands. "Easy, easy." The trainer holding the phone looked pale. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out. 2 minutes could be a lifetime." Ethan whispered, "Lauren, help me," without meaning to. Not her ghost, her memory. The echo of the woman who'd once told him, "You always run toward the people everyone else runs from. That's who you are." He drew in a breath. Then Ethan did something he hadn't done since the army. Something he'd sworn he would never do again because of how much he'd lost. He took command. "Listen up," he said. "We're not waiting for the paramedics to think for us. When they get here, I'm giving them the rundown. You grab his chart, you clear the hallway, you bring the emergency bag outside. Greeley, call whoever cares for this boy. Tell them he's leaving in an ambulance." No one questioned him, not even the billionaire. The paramedics burst into the room seconds later. They started their routine assessment, but one paused and frowned at Ethan. "Are you ex-combat medic?" Ethan said. "Vitals are dropping. Symptoms point toward acute pediatric stroke or seizure event. He's deteriorating fast." The medic nodded sharply. "Got it." Ethan stepped back only when they lifted the boy onto the stretcher. The kid's hand loosened from his grasp, fingers falling limp. For a heartbeat, Ethan felt the world blur. He saw another hand fall limp, Lauren's, the night they told him they did all they could. He nearly buckled. Then the boy made the faintest sound. Ethan wasn't even sure it was intentional, but it snapped him back into his body. "Go," Ethan rasped to the medics. "Now!" They wheeled the stretcher out. But before the doors closed, the boy's head turned just enough for one groggy, unfocused eye to land on Ethan. "Don't," the kid whispered, breath-breaking, "don't leave." It wrecked him, his heart, his grief, his guilt. All of it shattered at those two tiny words. He stepped forward and placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "I won't," he said, voice shaking. "I'm right behind you." And he meant it. The medics bolted for the tunnel. Ethan followed without hesitation. Greeley grabbed his arm. "Cole, wait." Ethan turned, pulse hammering. Greeley swallowed hard. "I don't..." He struggled for words. "I don't understand how you saw what everyone else missed." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have the breath for explanations. Greeley's voice broke. "Just don't leave him alone." Ethan looked him in the eyes. "I won't." And then he ran. They burst out into the humid night air lights from the ambulance, painting the pavement red and blue. The medics loaded the boy inside and turned to Ethan. "You riding with us, one?" asked. Ethan blinked. "What I know, I'm just..." The medic shook his head. He responded to your voice. "That's rare in a case like this. Get in." For the first time in years, someone wasn't pushing him away from a crisis. They were asking him in. Ethan climbed into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut behind him. As they sped away with sirens screaming, Ethan reached for the boy's hand again. This time the boy squeezed back, weak, barely there, but enough to say, "You came." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. He wasn't the man he once was, but tonight he was exactly who this child needed. And everyone who'd doubted him, every voice that said he was just maintenance, just a widower, just a man who'd lost too much, now saw the truth. Ethan Cole was the only reason that boy was still alive. The ambulance barreled through the city with a desperate howl, the kind that made drivers pull over instinctively, the kind that told the world someone's life is hanging by a thread. Inside, Ethan held the boy's hand. as if that alone could tether him to consciousness. The medic across from him worked with rapid precision, checking airway oxygen levels, neurological responses, but every few seconds he glanced at Ethan with something between confusion and respect. "You sure you're not still active duty?" the medic muttered under his breath as he adjusted the oxygen mask. Ethan didn't answer. He wasn't thinking about the question. His mind was locked on the boy's shallow breaths, the faint tremor in his fingers, the way his eyelid twitched like a dying signal. When the ambulance swung into the hospital bay, the rear doors flew open. A trauma team flooded the vehicle in seconds. They swarmed around the boy, lifting him gently but urgently, speaking in clipped medical shorthand. But even as they worked, two of them paused just for a heartbeat when they saw Ethan in the corner, blood pressure cuff still dangling from his hand, his palm pressed to the boy's shoulder. Something in his posture, his focus, the way he whispered calm directions even while backing out of the way, it didn't fit the uniform he wore. He looked like one of them. Maybe better. They wheeled the boy through the sliding doors. Ethan stepped off the ambulance ramp and took a breath so sharp it hurt. The cold night air cut through his sweat-soaked shirt. Sirens faded into the distance, and suddenly there was nothing left to do but follow. Behind him, the ambulance medic jogged up. "Hey, Cole. Right?" Ethan turned. "That call you made? You recognized the signs faster than half the rookies here ever would. You saved that kid before we even touched him." Ethan swallowed, unsure how to hold praise he hadn't heard in nearly a decade. Just acted on instinct. The medic shook his head. "Instinct doesn't check pupil reaction time." Then softer, "You belonged in that rig." Before Ethan could respond, the doors behind them burst open again. Raymond Greeley rushed through suit-rumpled face, stunned from the chaos of the last 30 minutes. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years on the walk from the stadium to the ER. He spotted Ethan instantly. "You, Cole, come here." Ethan braced himself. He expected blame, accusations, even rage. He'd risked his job, defied orders, embarrassed security. Greeley had every reason to tear into him. But when the older man approached, there was no anger, just trembling, and gratitude that looked almost painful. "I didn't understand," Greeley said, voice cracking. "Back there, I thought you were overstepping. I thought you were..." His breath hitched. "I was wrong." Ethan blinked, stunned into silence. Greeley ran a shaky hand over his mouth. "That boy is my only grandchild. My son passed last year." His voice shook again. "If you hadn't pushed, if you hadn't acted the way you did..." He couldn't finish. Ethan steadied him with a gentle hand on the shoulder. "He's in good hands now." Greeley nodded, but his eyes were searching Ethan's face, trying to understand something he hadn't seen before. "Who are you?" he whispered. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. He wasn't sure where to begin, but he didn't have to. A new voice spoke behind them. "Ethan Cole." He turned. A woman in navy scrubs hair tied back in a messy knot walked toward them with a familiar astonishment on her face. Her badge read, "Dr. Marissa Hall's Neurology." "Ethan," she said again, softer now. "I can't believe it. It's really you." Ethan blinked. Marissa Greeley looked between them. "You two know each other?" Marissa nodded. "We worked together overseas. I was on the neuro rotation during the Kandahar deployment." Then she turned to Ethan fully. "I thought you were still in the field. Or at least still practicing." He looked down, suddenly self-conscious in his maintenance uniform. Life took a different turn. "What happened tonight?" she asked gently. Ethan hesitated, but before he could answer, the medic cut in. He spotted a pediatric stroke before any of us even got on scene. His assessment was dead on. Marissa stared at Ethan, eyes widening. You recognized that? In the middle of a crowded stadium, without equipment, Ethan shrugged. I saw the droop, the altered blink, the collapse pattern. It lined up. Marissa exhaled, shaking her head. That is not something an average person sees, or even most medics. Greeley straightened, watching this exchange with growing realization. Are you telling me, he asked slowly, that he used to be a combat medic? Marissa finished, meeting Greeley's eyes. One of the best we had. Greeley stared at Ethan, stunned. Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks. That was a long time ago. Marissa stepped closer. You never lose that instinct. Never. Her voice softened. The boys got a chance because you acted when others hesitated. Greeley's eyes glistened. Shame flickered across his face, the shame of a man who had dismissed someone whose worth he never bothered to see. I treated you like you were nothing, he whispered. Just a maintenance guy getting in the way. Ethan didn't speak. Greeley swallowed hard. And you saved my grandson's life. Marissa's pager buzzed urgently. She checked it, then looked up. He's in imaging now. Early signs point to a clot, but he's stabilized enough for intervention. We'll know more soon. Greeley nodded, trembling again. And Ethan, she added, turning back to him, stay close. The family may need you. When she walked away, Greeley didn't move. For several long seconds, he simply stood there, staring at Ethan like he was seeing him for the very first time. Finally, he said, I owe you more than gratitude. Ethan shook his head. You don't owe me anything. But Greeley wasn't listening. His face was tightening, not with anger, but with decision. You ever think about returning to medicine? He asked. Ethan froze. I can't, he said quietly. I've got Mia. She needs me home. Regular hours. Predictability. That world doesn't allow for that. Greeley blinked. Mia. My daughter Ethan said. She has chronic asthma, had some close calls when she was young. The billionaire's eyes softened in a way Ethan hadn't expected. So you gave up your career? I gave her what she needed. Ethan replied simply. Greeley nodded slowly, his voice low. That explains everything. He took a step back, studying Ethan thoughtfully, as if recalibrating the entire map of his night, maybe his whole thinking. You know, Greeley said our sports foundation funds, medical outreach programs, youth training, and internal safety teams for franchise partners. We've been searching for someone with real field experience and a talent for recognizing medical distress early. Ethan blinked. I'm not a doctor. No, Greeley agreed. You're something rarer. The words hung in the air. You're someone who sees what others miss. Silence fell between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then Greeley spoke softly, almost carefully. When tonight is over, I'd like to talk with you about a position, flexible hours, full benefits for you and your daughter, and pay that reflects real expertise, not the uniform you're wearing. Ethan felt his breath catch. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel possible. He opened his mouth, then the hallway lights above them flickered, and a nurse hurried toward them. Mr. Greeley. The neurologist is ready to update you. Greeley nodded, then turned to Ethan. Come with me. Ethan stared. Are you sure? Greeley placed a hand on his shoulder, the same shoulder he'd once shoved aside. I don't want to face whatever comes next without the man who kept my grandson alive. The shift was complete. Ethan wasn't the outsider anymore. He wasn't the guy fixing toilets beneath stadium seats. He wasn't invisible. In one night, one impossible, terrifying night, Ethan's past, his losses, his instincts, his scars, all of it had collided into a single truth. He had never stopped being the man who ran toward danger while everyone else ran away. He had never lost the part of himself that knew how to save a life. And the world was finally seeing him for who he really was. As he followed Greeley down the hall toward the neurologist's office, his phone buzzed softly in his pocket. A text. From Mia. "Daddy, you okay?" Ethan's throat tightened. Tonight wasn't over. His old life and his new one were about to collide. And whatever the doctor said behind those doors, everything had already changed. The neurologist's update came in a quiet consultation room, lit by soft fluorescent light. The boy had suffered a clot, but they'd caught it in time. A surgical team was already working to restore blood flow, and early intervention meant his chances were good. Greeley pressed both hands to his face, shoulders trembling with relief. When he finally looked up, his eyes went straight to Ethan. "You saved him," he said, voice hoarse. "Not the medics, not the trainers, you." Ethan didn't know what to do with the praise, but he nodded once in acknowledgement. It was all he could manage. The staff who'd dismissed him earlier passed through the hallway with hushed steps, each offering him quick glances, some remorseful, some stunned, some quietly impressed. Even Vince, the security chief who'd pushed him aside on the field, approached with an awkward stiffness. "I was wrong about you," Vince muttered. "Way wrong." He rubbed the back of his neck. "If you ever need a reference or, hell, anything, just say the word." Ethan accepted the apology with a simple nod. It wasn't vindication, he felt. Just a strange, calm clarity, like all the noise that had clouded his life had suddenly fallen away. Hours later, after the surgery succeeded and the boy was stabilized, Greeley insisted on taking Ethan and Mia home in his car. The stadium's president called to check in. Trainers texted updates, and people who had barely said his name for years now spoke it with respect. At Mia's bedside that night, Ethan sat holding her hand as she slept, her curls spilling across her pillow the same way they had when she was small. He whispered the news to her, even though she couldn't hear it. The boy lived, the danger passed, and everything had changed. Over the next week, Greeley visited Ethan twice, once at the apartment, once at the stadium. Not as an owner checking on an employee, but as a grandfather who owed him something words could never fully express. He repeated the offer, a position with the Greeley Foundation's Youth Safety Initiative. Medical oversight, community engagement, predictable hours, benefits. A salary that would mean Mia would never go without care again. Ethan resisted at first. The uniform of a maintenance worker was humble but familiar, safe in its anonymity. But then Mia tugged on his sleeve one morning and said, "Daddy, if you help more kids, that makes the world less scary, right?" And something in him settled. He accepted. He turned in his badge the following week. His co-workers, even the ones who rarely spoke, lined up to shake his hand. Luis hugged him so tight it hurt. And when Ethan walked out of Harbor Field for the last time, he didn't feel like he was running away from who he used to be. He felt like he was finally walking toward it. 8 months later, Ethan stood on a stage at a new training center built with foundation funding. Behind him hung a banner reading Greeley Youth Medical Preparedness Program, a mouthful but a meaningful one. He'd helped design the curriculum, early recognition of distress, emergency basics, trauma responses for coaches and volunteers. Parents from every corner of Dayton had come. Local news crews set up tripods, and front row center sat Greeley's grandson, cheeks full, eyes bright, a baseball cap pulled low as he grinned at Ethan. After the ceremony, the boy rushed up to him. "Coach Ethan," he said proudly, tugging on his sleeve. "My mom says I get to help teach the younger kids next session." Ethan laughed, ruffling his hair. I'd say that's a pretty good promotion. The kid beamed like he'd been handed the World Series trophy. Greeley approached next Kane, tapping gently on the polished floor. You've built something real here, he said. Something this city needed. So did you? Ethan replied. The older man shook his head. All I did was follow the man who taught me what to look for. Across the room, Mia waved wildly at her dad, calling him over to meet the children she'd befriended. She wore a lanyard that read Junior Assistant, a title she'd insisted on creating herself. Her inhaler hung from the strap, but her smile was effortless, her world bigger and brighter than it had been before. Ethan excused himself and crossed the room. Mia threw her arms around him, the kind of hug that still softened every hardened edge inside him. Daddy, she said proudly, you saved a boy, and then you saved a bunch more. He kissed the top of her head. No, Peanut, I just paid attention. She nodded thoughtfully. Well, a lot of people don't. He smiled. And in that moment, in that bright room filled with laughter, with families, with second chances, Ethan realized something simple and profound. For the first time in years, he wasn't waiting for the next crisis to hit. He wasn't holding his breath. He wasn't bracing for the kind of loss that never fully heals. He was living. He was building. He was enough. And as he watched Mia run off to join her friends, he felt a peace he hadn't known since before war, before grief, before he'd buried the part of himself that knew how to step into chaos and create order. Some heroes don't wear uniforms. Some don't stand in spotlights. Some aren't even recognized until the moment everything collapses and the world suddenly needs them. But the truth is simple. A hero is the person who refuses to look away when looking closer might save a life. And sometimes the quietest ones among us are the ones who see everything.